Hello and welcome
Hola.
to the Real Talk discussion. Today we have a super special guest. It was a long time coming. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Jamie.
Thank you,
Excited to
Andrew.
be
Tell
here.
us a little about your story.
Yeah, so I entered the digital wellness space about 3 years ago. It was always a passion of mine. I went to school out west. I'm from the Midwest, and I got kind of really intoxicated by nature, to put it that way. It was my college experience. I was just kind of lost in mountains and rivers and hiking and I was offline just by nature for that period of my life. And I came back, I got a job in Chicago, wanted to be closer to my family, and I started to notice that things were a little bit different. It just so happened that that coincided with a lot of changes in the ways that we interacted with each other through technology. And I was very signed on at my corporate job for 3 years and came home to see my family, yet wasn't seeing them live. I was just kinda interacting with them when I could, and then I had, a little bit of a, family bonding experience, as we all do, through illness, and it brought us all together physically, yet we were still on our screens, and it just was very jarring for me. I went from basically, growing up with 8 siblings and being close as ever and in person to being together with everyone and being disconnected somehow. So that was when I decided I wanted to devote my attention not in a corporate consulting area, but in a way that I could help the people around me more. And that's how I started in this space, and I'm still at it.
That's so beautiful, and I appreciate you sharing the triumphs and tribulations that brought you here because a lot of times those moments of pain is the portal to something greater. So, although it is challenging to have those jarring moments of like the screens are dividing us, in a
Yeah.
way, it is an opportunity to deepen those connections. So, what has worked for you, and what have you had common challenges of things that we
Yeah.
all face?
Yeah, good question. When I first set out on the journey, it was very much focused on youth, and specifically, even something that was near and dear to my heart was the advent of my younger siblings getting in cars with their phones. It was just something that really triggered me for some reason. It still does, as people just kind of get used to driving with one hand on their phone, which is scary. Um, but I really wanted to solve that problem, and that's when I started realizing how big the problem was, right? Like I didn't know that we all had our phones with us in the driver's seat because of the things going on behind the screen. I just thought, we were infatuated. And once I realized that me thinking that I was this kind of signed off mountain man in my head, that I was actually more addicted than I realized, that's when I really came to the conclusion that everyone was worse off than they realized in that moment. And I think that's still the case. And like you said, jarring experiences. I mean, jarring is the wrong word. I would say that's the right word for the social dilemma, which can kind of like jar you into that uncomfortable space where you want to make some change. But what I was motivated to do then was give people that moment of like, whoa, I did not know that about my phone or my computer, or even about my relationship that is mostly taking place over text or, email. And by just kind of sharing facts and tidbits that I was learning with my friends and family, it started to be this really cool group dialogue. We started doing events without really a plan. We would just get together. Some of them were artists, so we would do either a live show of some sort, and it evolved into sign off. Like I was building a texting and driving app, and then we started doing events, and the community started informing our actions, and it was a beautiful symbiotic thing until events came to a stop, unfortunately, and now we're kind of figuring things out from there.
I love how you're evolving with the times and that community conversation is so important. It is just so interesting to get that feedback and then implement it to better serve. And
Mhm.
with everything going on, whether it's in the car or when you're with people, how can we deepen those connections? So I feel like you really got to the core of the why. And
Mm,
I'm curious for you in those moments where you feel yourself getting into the technology
yeah.
loophole, how do you pause and recenter yourself?
Mm, yeah. Well, people like you help. Legitimately, I could not take on a goal like, less screen time without the help of others. I just don't have the willpower that some people do to set it down when it's captivating me, or I feel like I, need it for productivity, or, really good reasons that I need my phone, but they can add up if I'm not careful. Luckily, I'm surrounded by friends and family that know that this is really my number one goal, is to be present and to not let it distract. So we just implement rules for each other. And I always say that it's nice being, the founder of a company that is built on this idea, because then if I don't live it, someone's going to call me out. And that's why I urge other people not to start their own digital wellness companies necessarily. That'd be great. But to get the dialogue going, like, you can't keep this goal private. If you see the movie, or you come across a blog, or you just like feel it inherently, like, why am I tapping my screen when there's no notifications? If you notice that, express that to someone that can hold you accountable, like a really close friend or family member, whoever it might be, someone that's in your dorm room, or someone who's your neighbor. I don't know how deep you can really get with it, depend without being obsessive, but just have people holding you accountable is my advice. I'm lucky to have, my big family that I mentioned, and people like you, and working in a place that takes it very seriously. So it's easy to call people out and kind of say, like, hey, this was not the best use of my attention, or the best time for this to take place. And yeah, creating that open, honest dialogue can go a long way, because sometimes you lose track of your goals and you need a reminder.
Absolutely. And that clear communication certainly helps with the accountability. So that's beautiful that you have relationships where you can foster that kind of discussion.
Yeah, it's fun. I try to surround myself with those types of people.
I love it. And in a way, with technology, we do choose who we surround ourselves in our digital realms, which
Mm,
is so powerful and often takes some self consideration and reflecting on, what is on my phone, who am I connected with, who are the contacts that I carry around with me everywhere I go.
yeah.
So it's really interesting to be in this evolving time and using technology as a tool for good. So, in your perspective, what does health enabled technology feel like? And what would your intentions be for the next 10 years of this evolving digital world?
Yeah, health intention technology. That's just a beautiful idea. Because up until, this discussion getting a little bit louder, most technology, has a goals that run without regard for health, when they really all should. And that's being changed not only by the need for digital wellness measures, as we figure out what the real repercussions of the overwhelm is, but also the mental health. um, I don't know the term for it, but just the way that it's coming to light, that people are talking about mental health more, um, and that has to now be factored into the technology we use. And the biggest piece of digital wellness is mental health, in my opinion. So I would say that, we need to probably just have, see, this is my consulting brain working, like a code of ethics that we can almost audit of the tools that we use, and say, you know, does this tool engage me in a way that is, um, forming I don't want to say addiction, but forming a reliance on it, or calling you back to it for a reason that is not the purpose you open the app for, right? Like, if it's just there to suck you in and use your time, then obviously, if that's going to be something that's that's clear when you're using the app, I think that that's something that should be changed, and that that might not be a governing body's job. That would be nice if, the Center for Humane Tech can get to where they want to be and actually police these things through tech creation and change the way that they are built. But I think it's gonna come from the people, right? Like if enough people are downloading a toxic app, it's going to get created, and other apps like it are going to get created. So my dream of healthy tech wouldn't be, now that I'm thinking about it, it wouldn't be like a governing body where we're making sure there are checks and balances. I hope that that exists, but it would be a dialogue where our app store ratings all involve how the app makes you feel, and how it has you know benefited your life, even if it's just ways and like helping you get around. There's still simple tools that need to take into account our mental health when we spend so much time using them. So I don't know what that'll look like, but it looks cool in my head.
Yes, imagining infinite possibilities, it's really powerful to reflect on it. And
Yeah.
I love that we're in this conversation now, so we can be laying the groundwork and planting the seeds for the future because as you mentioned before, a lot of us feel it, and it might not be in conversation in our community at this time. However, I trust that that gut feeling that we all have is connected to our collective consciousness where we're all tuned in, maybe not physically on a social media platform, but
Yeah.
we're all like tuned in.
Hmm. Yeah, you can feel it, especially now, right, with the circumstances we find ourselves in. um, when I first got into the space, bringing up digital wellness, people would think that's a misnomer for any type of wellness tracking you do on your phone or something like that. But now it's almost becoming commonplace to discuss our addictions to devices, and the news streams that are coming in about what we're dealing with and the election cycle. Pretty much everyone can acknowledge that they spend too much time on their devices, unless they're like living out in the sticks. It's just hard to stay away from it, even if you are doing a good job of clearing your notifications and steering clear of news that might trigger you or certain conversations you don't want to have. They're going to happen around you at this rate, because there's so much going on, and there's so much pressure to stay on top of things and have an opinion. It's very stressful. So it's good that that's triggering mental health discussion overall, and that's leading to, yeah, more discussion around how our devices are feeding into that, which is a good thing, even though the overall mental health might be deteriorating a bit at a group level right now, just because we're all locked down.
Yeah, and I appreciate that point because even when we do in our personal practice apply these digital flourishing tips, if the group is all doing this separately, it's still happening. And one of the action items from Tristan Harris was similar to birds. How can we migrate with a group and a community to something different? So
Mm,
I trust that these things take time and we all wake up when we're ready, but I'm certainly looking forward to when that time is where we flock to something different and imagining the future of technology 10 years from now. I would love for it to be so seamless in a way that supports me and my goals. So, the same way that the algorithm knows I like crystals and sound healing and all these things,
right.
all of those data points are used to support me. So instead of taking me out of the moment, technology bringing me into the moment, back to the
Hmm.
present, because that is our gift. So, how can we have more time where we're centered and grounded, where technology is actually supporting us?
Yeah, I love the way you put that. That's beautiful.
Manifesting.
um, Yeah. For me, what that brings to mind is like most of my screen time, and I track it kind of obsessively, as you'd expect, is text messaging, and I try to work on that. I do have auto reply set up so that I don't feel guilty if my phone's face down and I feel like, I know I was mid conversation with someone, and I hate to know that I'm probably the one leaving them red. So that helps a little bit. And then I try to pick up the phone and call people more. But I do love nurturing relationships from my past and creating things that manifest for the future, and just kind of loving what's going on in my relationships now when we need each other the most. Um, but it's tricky. Like, something that I think about a lot is how many relationships should we be managing as human beings? Like, not to get into a whole history discussion here, but I don't think it's as many as we're juggling. I don't think it's healthy. And I've had that conversation with myself, and I don't know where to trim the fat, so to speak, because I love everyone that I, choose to give my attention to. But that'll be an interesting intersection, when we realize that access to every bit of information across the planet and beyond is at our fingertips. That doesn't mean we all need to have it at all times and know it and be able to talk about it. It's okay to check out of certain things, and I even try to just keep certain relationships to live interaction, like we'll talk in person. And some people shy away from that, but that's like a down the road migration, perhaps, where we realize we need more just like in-person community, and we get kind of burnt out, like our neurons are firing too hard in this technical space where we're getting kind of overwhelmed, and it might be something we have to return to, just limiting those things as our human reptile bodies stay the same, and like all the access and the options just keep expanding.